In this session, we're going to hear about key uses and elements of e-bike usage across the board here. We're going to first hear from Chris Morum with Net Zero Logistics via virtual connection here. He's going to talk about their work with e-bike freight and delivery in New York City and beyond. Then we'll hear from Mike Salisbury, who's with the Colorado Energy Office, also virtually, and he's going to outline some of the info about their e-bike rebates in the state of Colorado and some of the impacts they've seen on consumer uptake and opinions about it. And then lastly, we'll hear from Andy Legason from Cycle Hoop. I know we just talked a lot about storage and charging and other facilities for e-bikes, and it'll be great to hear from him as well about their work. After each one, we're going to do a brief Q&A with each presenter. So we won't save all of the questions to the very end. So if you have questions for folks, we should have probably somewhere between 5 and 8 minutes for some Q&A after each presenter. And then we will wrap up and get people out to lunch at 12:30. So with that, Chris, can you come on screen and share your screen, and we'll jump right into your presentation. Thanks again for joining us this morning.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you to the University of Minnesota for having me today. And also a special thank you to Civilized Cycle for the recommendation. I want to pull up my presentation. So my name is Chris Moore. I'm Director of Sales and Operations with Net Zero Logistics and Affiliates. Net Zero Logistics and Affiliates, we are one of the largest e-cargo bike operators in North America. So our experience, with over 90 years of experience in the last mile, our innovation, we've been using e-cargo bikes since 2017, servicing New York City, specifically Manhattan, and the 134 zip codes between Battery Park and 125th Street. Our footprint, not only are we in New York, but we also have an e-bike operation in Boston, Massachusetts. We do other distribution through Connecticut as well. What's interesting about us and what separates us from other e-cargo bike operators is that we operate with W-2 employees, with over 860 employees across all of our network. Our fleet consists of over 300 electric cargo bikes with the Coaster, Tern, Diamondback, and we're doing some testing with Fernhay and Fulpra, and we're looking to add Civilized Cycle into that as well. With our warehouse distributions in Brooklyn, New York, Hartford, Stamford, and then Boston, Massachusetts. So here you can see the different types of e-bikes that we use for the different applications. As you start on the far left, a Tern, very basic. This is more of what we used at the very beginning of 2017. We still use today, where a Tern will put a trailer on the back of the Tern, a cartload trailer to be specific, and we'll haul bins around full of groceries, floral, and other goods. A Coaster Venture application is more used for catering for food, and able to maneuver through New York City streets very efficiently, fast. Coaster Freighter, this is more in our e-commerce and our Fulpra AG series and the Fernhay. This is where we see more an application for e-commerce package delivery. With this, it's interesting to see the different types of thresholds and cubic capacity of the vehicles and how they're applicable to a modern cargo van. So what we offer in the marketplace is that in New York City specifically is we're all fully aware congestion pricing went into effect last month. Less vehicles on the road. They're striving to make it a cleaner environment in New York City. And what better use is than using cargo bikes to do the final mile and to save on economics pricing. As you can see, we have bikers that are going throughout the city. For example, on the right, this is what I was explaining, our Tern bike with a carload trailer and bins on the back on the trailer. Dedicated services that we offer to our customers. This is one of the service offerings that we have. We run dedicated services, you could say, from grocery stores, fulfillment centers, e-commerce centers, retail stores, to deliver products to end consumers or do business-to-business transactions. So looking at our 2022 to year-to-date 2024, this was in December, we've delivered over 14 million packages via e-bikes. 100% employee model, and what we've taken off the road is 51,000 carbon vehicles replaced by EVs. So one of the things that we introduced in the 2024 marketplace, specifically in New York City, was something called the micro hub, where, as you can see, this diagram goes through. You start in the upper left. We have a line haul inbound um, from retailers, shippers into our induction warehouse, a warehouse that's Brooklyn, New York, where we store packages, we route these packages, and then we put it onto another vehicle that goes down to the lower right into our micro hubs that are strategically located throughout New York City. And at these micro hubs, this is where our bikes, walkers, EV vehicles meet the product there, transload onto the bikes, vans, or walkers to do distribution to final mile delivery to the customers. Put in perspective, as you look at this, is the warehouse in Brooklyn, New York. The current micro hubs, as you can see, that we have along the island of Manhattan to service all the 134 zip codes throughout. In our expansion plans to add 8 to 10 new micro hubs through Manhattan. So concept 2 phase with the micro hubs is this is looking at what a micro hub will look like in phase 2. It goes down to containerization of product for final mile delivery. Where you can see here, I'll go through the diagram of bay 1, a truck unloading space. This is on either, I would say a micro hub is either off-street parking, open parking lots, open parking ramps, on-street parking that's designated for micro hub commercial use. So in this specific example, this is parking spaces along the street that are dedicated to a micro hub fulfillment. So bay 1, this is a 26-foot box truck that's bringing product in. So just for this scenario to go through, this is bringing product from our Brooklyn warehouse into the Upper West Side of New York City. Parks along the curb. Bay 2, this is where we have vehicles that are containerized, that are bringing product. The containers are coming out of the box truck and being loaded on to the e-bikes. Bay 3 is what we have as extra capacity to always keep the flow of trucks coming into the area, to keep circulating more vehicles, so we can circulate not just one exchange at a micro hub per day, but 2, 3, 4. This is a new concept that we're testing out with the New York City DOT in Q2 of 2025. So that's all I have for a presentation today. I know it's kind of quick. I really wanted to open it up for questions and what we're doing in New York, and if there's anything out there.
Thanks, Chris. I would start us off with one question. Today a lot of what we're focusing on are how e-bikes and policy are interacting, and I'm curious from your all's perspective, are there any particular policy areas that you're really focused on thinking about how changes there or new approaches there could enable your business further?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ways is the charging of the batteries. As everybody's well aware, it's heard in the horrible news that's been happening in New York. New York's been the front runner of the e-cargo bikes specifically, and the horror stories about charging. There needs to be stricter policies on charging and how it's done in order to really achieve the goals of zero emissions through e-cargo bike deliveries. As you can see right now in the horror stories that we're hearing, it's kind of still a little loosey-goosey, but for us, Net Zero Logistics, we invite the FDNY into our facilities and our charging, because we know that we're confident that we're doing it the right way. And I put a lending hand out to anybody that's in this conference or listening in. If you need any advice on how to do this correctly, we consider ourselves professionals in this.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I know you can't see the audience, but there's about 50-ish folks here, and I'm gonna repeat any questions they may have to you, so we can keep going. Yeah, sir.
Are there any issues with bikes or products being stolen?
Issues with any theft or bikes, either theft for bikes or products that you guys have encountered, Chris?
No. Since we converted more into a containerized e-bike, and we've got away from I'm gonna say the cargo trailer with the bins on top. We've seen a lot less theft. We see about the same amount of theft with package delivery as you would normally with a cargo van delivering to their doorstep. Um, Theft of the vehicles of our bikes is very, very random and few. They're big, they're honky, and they're really hard to move by hand unless you know what you're doing.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, Becky.
How are you handling pickups specifically? Because deliveries, you know, the product will fit in the e-cargo bike, but with a pickup, what if it's too big? How are you handling that challenge?
Great, thanks. Chris, the question is about pickups of delivery, not just the drop-off. Do you guys do pickup from people's addresses, businesses, and how do you handle the logistical challenge of maybe showing up and realizing something's bigger than the bike you sent or some other scenario to that effect?
Yeah, we experience that, or it's temperature control, or we do a lot with floral as well. So you know, if you have a vase and you don't want the flowers bouncing around, and the packaging is very, very crucial. We've set up processes where when we interact with customers, we make it very, very clear. We need the dimensions, the type of product, how it's packaged, so we don't run into those errors that we've learned from our past. Um, we've got very specific when you deal with pharmaceuticals or grocery or food, and what we can pick up and like we won't pick up. For example, we do a lot of catering along within New York City. So we pick up from restaurants and deliver to commercial buildings, office buildings. One thing that we've learned is, and so have all the catering companies, is it's very efficient to use e-bikes for catering in New York City. You can move very quick. The food stays warm when it gets to the customer. But having lids on top of the drinks, it's a disaster with e-bikes. And what they've done is gone more to a bottle, plastic, reusable goods, in order to do that. So we've learned on our side, and we've also taught the customers on the correct way to, or more efficient ways, or more green ways, and how to package their products.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, Greg.
Yeah, you see in videos of New York bike messengers going through traffic, taking chances, squeezing between cars. How are you handling the logistics of that heavy traffic situation in, I suspect it's Manhattan there. So how do you handle that?
Thanks.
And being able to navigate, and then also manage risk management for that, for any accidents or incidents.
Thanks, Greg. Chris' question is about sort of driver behavior with your bikes and thinking about navigating the congested New York streets and, the historical example or contemporary example of bike messengers maybe being a little bit more aggressive bikers. How do you all talk with your drivers and delivery staff and think about navigating those streets safely?
Yep. So one thing that's unique about us, I touched upon, is that we have W-2 employees. We don't tap into the gig market, and this enables us to coach, train our employees more efficiently. For example, and we are able to abide by law. For example, New York City has a law for e-bikes that they cannot travel over 12 miles per hour. All of our e-bikes are governed to 12 miles per hour. So this is a difference between, say, like somebody on just a normal e-bike with a backpack, where they don't have a governor on there and they're an independent contractor. There is no governance over that. They can go 20 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour. That's a lot higher risk. We're able to manage our risk by having that governor controlling the speed. Second, we have a testing period with all of our employees, so training 2 weeks. First, and during the interview process is right at the start. We check to see if they know how to ride an e-bike. They go through training and understanding, okay, this is the things that you look out for, right? But what's unique about New York City, and that we saw in Boston as well, is the bike lanes are so efficient and they're identified throughout the streets. For example, up in Boston, this is pretty funny. When we first started operating up there, we got a lot of complaints from the community that our e-bikes were too slow. They were taking up the bike lanes, but they were governed to the law. So we thought on ourselves, we worked with the city to say, hey, we're abiding by the law, but we're getting all these complaints. Can we come up with a message for the community to say, hey, we're doing the right things here. This is what you really want. And it was kind of one of those odd things of saying bad feedback from the community, but we're actually doing good. So back to the hiring, the training process, bike lane identifications, the governance that we take on the equipment really reduces our risk within the streets of New York and Boston.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Probably time for one or two more questions. I see one here.
I'd like to hear more about the bike-specific infrastructure and how it's working. If there's, the protected, separated bike lanes are preferred for the drivers, or not, or, how would you change the design of bike infrastructure to better suit your needs?
Great, thanks. Chris, question specifically about how you all use the existing bike infrastructure and whether or not drivers and team are preferring, are they on the streets themselves? Are they on the protected bike lanes? Are they using the other infrastructure that's in place in New York? How do you all interact with that? And do you have maybe lessons learned or things you wish would be happening with that infrastructure?
Yeah, so updates on the infrastructure, right? So when we go through training with all of our employees, is we don't ride on the sidewalks. And any monitoring of that, we have GPS units that on all of our vehicles to make sure that they're not going on the sidewalk. If they are, it's a written notice, and we work through those employees. Infrastructure, updating on micro hubs, bike lanes. We sit on the New York City Freight Committee board, and we are a voice that we work very closely with the city for updates on how to efficiently roll out programs and update current infrastructure. For example, the micro hub that I designed, put the layout there, we're actually April 1st, that exact layout, we are working with the New York City DOT to put that in 78th Street and Amsterdam Street and the Upper West Side. That exact model will be there. And we're going to test that out with the New York City. So one of the biggest things that we have is the feedback and the relationship with the New York City DOT. That's really taken it to the next level. And it's a very, very good working relationship to build the infrastructure and take the lessons that we've learned in order to make the environment better infrastructure.
Great, thanks, Chris. Was there one more question over here? Yeah, sorry, in the back.
I have two quick questions. One is, do you have plans to expand outside of the areas you're operating in now? We would love to see you in Minneapolis, maybe. Is it point to point, or are you working with UPS, FedEx, Amazon?
Great. Two questions, Chris. One, how are you all thinking about potential expansions? And is that a thing you're looking at actively? And then a second sort of operational question is Net Zero point to point, or are you coordinating with, UPS's, FedEx's, Amazons of the world? And if so, how's that work?
Yeah, so we're always looking to expand. We've got a lot of learning lessons. We've talked to a lot of different municipalities and cities. And we're always looking to expand. That's on our foresight. So, yes. What was the second question?
Just how are you all fully point to point of you're taking possession of something and doing all the delivery, or is there additional coordination where you might, drop something off to another deliverer? What's your interaction with the other major delivery companies?
Right. So if studying the current marketplace, we view ourselves as not a DHL, FedEx, or Amazon, UPS, USPS. We're a regional carrier. And in the marketplace right now, due to our simplicity of rate structure and our service levels, we can actually at times compete against those other teams. But what we've done in the marketplace is we can do point to point, so business to business. So for example, you own a floral shop and you want to distribute to your customers in New York City. we can pick up from the floral shop and do distribution throughout New York City. Or your Target and you want all your e-commerce packages for the 134 zip codes delivered in Manhattan. You can drop off at our warehouse and we'll do a sort and seg and then distribute out. We offer different services of on demand too. We have bikes that people that I don't know, you bought a nice piece of clothing from a nice high-end store and you want it delivered automatically. We can do that kind of service as well. Call that on-demand service. So there's a plethora of different services that we offer in the marketplace, and sometimes we compete against the big boys, and sometimes we don't. It's a little back and yin and yang kind of thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Chris. And thanks again for joining us this morning. I now have visions of many floral Valentine's deliveries wending their way through the streets of New York in just a couple days. Great to hear more about what Net Zero is doing. I did want to flag the Center for Transportation Studies is focused on freight all year this year. We're calling our theme Unpacking Freight from Producers to Front Doors. So Chris's presentation is something we'll share on that site. And we're also going to have have a visit from Civilized Cycle and the trike that the University of Minnesota just bought at lunch, so you can check that out at lunch as well. So hopefully more on some of the e-bike freight as we go through the year as well. So Chris, thanks again for the presentation and the time this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I hope you can hear the applause. All right, we will transition now to Mike Salisbury from the Colorado Energy Office. Mike, you can hear me all right? Great. If you want to just jump right into your presentation and share with us some of what you all are learning out there in Colorado, we'll look forward to it, and then we'll have more Q&A at the end as well.
Thank you. Really thanks to everyone here. Thanks to the University of Minnesota. I wish I was there in person. It's a lot more fun to be there and get a chance to chat with everyone. But this is, I guess, the second best solution. Thank you. My name is Mike Salisbury. I work at the Colorado Energy Office, where I am the Director of Transportation Programs there. So we work on a really broad variety of everything, really focused on electrified mobility, including electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging, e-bikes, electric car share, anything we're trying to do with, our goal as an office is, really reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing cost, doing so with zero emission vehicles. And e-bikes very much counts as the, in some ways, one of the best, most efficient zero emission vehicles. So we do a lot of work with e-bikes, which I'm going to dive into during this presentation today. But as I said, our focus as an office is really around greenhouse gas emissions. And so these are some of the targets we have set ourselves as a state to reduce GHG in line with the climate science. And you can see, I think from this slide, transportation in Colorado is tied or the number one source of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's a very large source of our emissions in Colorado and a very challenging source to reduce as well. We're making a lot of strides with electric power, with shifting to renewables, but the transportation and the vehicles, the millions of vehicles that Coloradans own is a little stickier to deal with. But, I think maybe this is not surprising or new information to this audience, but kind of a focus on why is the state so focused on e-bikes? And, it really is, I think, the potential for replacement of vehicle trips is really huge. So this is data that comes from Rocky Mountain Institute, just showing in the state of Colorado, almost 50% of vehicle trips that happen are under 5 miles. Almost 70% are under 10 miles. So, e-bike, maybe people are not going to replace a lot of their 30, 40 mile commute rides with an e-bike, but a vast majority of the vehicle trips that people are making today, we think are very much replaceable with an e-bike. So those shorter trips, local trips, there's a lot of potential for e-bikes to replace all kinds of vehicle trips. And you can see with the cargo bike models, those can also replace those multi-passenger trips, people taking their children to school, daycare, things like that. So, again, e-bikes have this huge potential from a climate perspective. This is kind of a life cycle, like emissions analysis of different vehicle types. And an e-bike has, about less than 1% of the emissions of a gasoline vehicle and about 2 to 3% of the greenhouse gas emissions of an electric vehicle. So again, a very, very efficient, a very climate-friendly way to any trips we can shift to an e-bike is going to be a big win from a climate perspective. So focusing on Colorado, we have a lot of great work going on in the state around e-bikes. I do believe we're the number one e-bike state in the country, although I'm sure other states will argue with me about that. We've seen a lot of great programs statewide. We've also seen a lot of great local programs. I like to say that Colorado is also the home of the Denver e-bike incentive, which is probably one of the most famous e-bike incentive programs. And we've worked really closely with the local governments in the state of Colorado, so a number of them are also standing up their own programs. But the state has made big investments, so over about $75 million expected to invest in e-bike programs, e-bike incentives over the next, through 2032. So there's a lot of money going out there. A lot of that's going towards, some of the programs we have. So I'm going to go into more detail about two of these. One is the e-bike rebate program. The other one is the e-bike tax credit program. These have been the incentive programs that the state has stood up over the last few years to get e-bikes in the hands of Colorado residents. So the e-bike rebate program had about $10 million of funding. E-bike tax credit has about $60 million in funding over the next, 8 years or so. So starting with the e-bike rebate program, this one started in August of 2023, and we're just really winding it down now. It did come from a state bill that was a one-time disbursement of this $12 million total. There's $2 million for other e-bike programs, about $10 million for the rebates. So we have just about wrapping this program up right now. This is a rebate, a point of sale rebate. Residents apply for it through an online portal. When we open up applications, we then kind of do a random selection to choose who gets to get a voucher. I think one of the lessons learned I'll share is that there's, for any kind of e-bike incentive program, everywhere I've seen, they're generally oversubscribed. There are more people who want the incentives than can receive them. So that's the case here. We have about 40,000 people who have applied over the course of this program. We've just issued just under 10,000 rebates, and then we've had about 8,000 of those rebates redeemed. This program is focused on low and moderate income Coloradans. Again, it's a point of sale rebate. They apply for the voucher, they get the voucher, they go to a participating bike shop, and they get that amount off the purchase price of their bike. And it was set up, it was $1,100 off the purchase of a bike. There was additional adders for an e-cargo bike, additional adders for adaptive bikes. We also had a kind of equipment incentive as well, $100 for like helmets and locks and things like that. So we've seen a very high redemption rate. It's a really exciting program to have as a state to really allow lower income residents across the state of Colorado to get access to their own e-bike. And so, as I mentioned, that program is kind of winding down right now. And what we have now, not exactly taking its place, but starting to fill a little of that gap, is the state e-bike tax credit program. So this, again, is a bill that was passed just over about 2 years ago. It, again, is a point of sale incentive. And that gets a little sticky because it's a tax credit. So the customer, again, goes into any one of our, there's over 100 participating bike shops across the state, in addition to some online retailers as well. And they fill out a form and they instantly get a $450 reduction in the purchase price of the e-bike. And then that tax credit is actually claimed by the bike shop that is participating in the program. And then they eventually are reimbursed by the State Department of Revenue. So this program launched April 1st of this year, 2024, and we are estimating, we don't really have final numbers, we think on the low side we're going to see about 15,000 e-bike purchases over the 9 months of 2024. We do require the e-bikes to meet standard either UL or EN certifications to get to concerns about, what Chris was sharing about battery fires, things like that. So trying to get a higher quality e-bike into the market. And again, this has been a very successful program. It's been really interesting to watch it roll out and have the bike shops participate in it. Been some challenges there with the reimbursement part of that. Wait longer for reimbursements than I think most of them are comfortable with, but we are making those reimbursements much faster in this calendar year. So very, I think, exciting program. Really excited to see where it continues to go with the numbers of e-bikes that we're seeing purchased in Colorado via this program. So, I'm going to share some very, very high level findings. We've seen both in the Denver program and work in the state program as well. E-bikes really, and this is, I think we see this also across other programs across the country. E-bikes really do replace vehicle trips. They're definitely, are people just, replacing bike trips, replacing transit trips? And from all the survey data we've seen, they're really, they are doing all those things too, but they're replacing a lot of vehicle trips. So definitely making an impact on vehicle miles traveled and therefore emissions benefits. We've also seen that, income qualified residents are riding their bikes more. In Denver, we saw them riding about 50% more miles per week than kind of the standard or, a regular resident who wasn't income qualified. We do see, I think that e-bikes can very much be a very cost-effective way from like a cost per ton perspective of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, especially from the transportation sector. Also really important to consider, there's lots of other benefits of e-bikes. I could probably hammer on about them for a while. There's air quality benefits, there's health benefits, there's traffic congestion benefits, all the things you don't necessarily get by replacing a gasoline vehicle with an electric vehicle, with replacing a gasoline vehicle or an electric vehicle with an e-bike. There's a lot of these additional co-benefits that e-bikes can bring that, I think we're just starting to better understand how to try to quantify some of those benefits. We're also seeing in Colorado as a statewide program that, it's not just something that's happening in the big cities or the urban areas. People across the state of Colorado are taking advantage of the e-bike rebate and the e-bike tax credit. And I think, probably not going to surprise people. Some of the big barriers we still see are around, lack of safe biking infrastructure, lack of secure bike storage are kind of two of the bigger kind of other barriers out there that are preventing people from either buying e-bikes or riding their e-bikes more. So, and kind of to finish up here, just some lessons learned from working on a number of different e-bike programs. Again, the funding amounts we have as a government entity, whoever, is unlikely to be able to meet demand. So that's just a challenge from a programmatic design point of view. I think when you're looking at designing an e-bike program, I think it's really important to start out understanding and being clear about what problems are you trying to solve? Are you trying to address climate? Are you trying to improve mobility? Are you trying to improve equity? All of these things can kind of go together with an e-bike program, but depending on what your focus is, what exactly the problem that's most important to you that you're trying to solve, that may really impact the design of the program and how you think about rolling out an incentive program. And then I'll just say, finally, if at all possible, as you design something, try to think about how you can build in data collection on the front end. Generally, we've relied on a lot of surveys on the back end after someone's purchased a bike to get information on how the e-bikes are being used, what are the impacts of the programs. And that's certainly one way to do it, but there's definitely other ways, perhaps to get people to agree to give some sort of data ahead of time and get them committed to that before they get the voucher, buy the e-bike, and then no longer need anything from you. So that's something I would just encourage everyone to think about in kind of a e-bike incentive program design space. And I think got some kinds of questions. There's my contact information as well. Happy to try to answer any questions that people have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. We will do the same process where I'll look up here in a moment and see if questions people have, and I'll translate them for you too. While people are formulating their questions, one quick one I might ask was, Mike, I think you were doing you were in the midst of doing some surveying of rebate receivers, right? Am I accurate in that? Do you have any initial takeaways from that, or kind of any sneak peeks you can give us?
We're so close.
Oh, okay.
I wish this is probably like a week later, I'd have more information on the state rebate program. We've just finished up a survey of about, I said we had 8,000 people redeem the vouchers. We had about 3,000 people reply to the survey. So we're just kind of pulling together that information and data right now to kind of get a better sense of the program, the statewide program impact. So I wish I had more. I mean, I think, in the meantime, there's some pretty good data also out there from the city of Denver has done several surveys over the years of their program that I think has some really good sources of information on program impacts. I mean, I'm guessing we're going to see somewhat similar, but impacts, but we'll see.
Sounds
That's
good.
why we
Well,
do our own surveys.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up with you once you get it and learn some more because I know we're working through that in Minnesota right now. Great. Questions from Mike? Yeah, in the back.
I was curious how they built equity in the rebate program. They said 88% of the rebates went to low-income participants.
Sure.
How did they organize that and vet those participants?
Yeah, Mike, could you tell us a little bit more about how you have built equity concerns and approaches into the rebate, saying that I think we were highlighting the 88% number of folks with different income or lower income thresholds. I know that's something we've been considering here, and I think folks would be curious about how you guys structured it there.
Yeah, I think, and again, every program I think seems to slice this challenge a little bit differently. For example, in the city of Denver, there were two tiers of rebates: one for standard applicant, and then a higher amount if you were income qualified. So that's one way to design it. Again, for the state rebate program, it was really all focused on low or moderate income residents, and I think it really part of it, I think, is that that's not the challenge, perhaps, but it's trying to understand, are you trying to address equity and or GHG? Because I think sometimes those two can be a little bit in tension because we've seen at least in Denver that, again, income qualified residents are riding their bikes more and also replacing sometimes more vehicle trips. But often some of these residents are not, they were transit dependent individuals beforehand. So I mean, sometimes there are the people who are less likely to have a car in the first place are not always replacing vehicle trips. So just, point to think about how we're weighing the different goals of the program. And I think a lot of us are very much focused on both of those things, like VMT reduction, GHG reduction, and also equity. So, as a state, we're trying to think through right now as the rebate program winds down, as the tax credit stands up fully, what's our next step as a state? 'Cause I think we recognize that while the tax credit is great, probably a really good avenue for average Coloradans, I will say, it's probably not sufficient to really move the market in the income qualified space. So we're kind of trying to think could we develop another program that is stackable with the tax credit? Hopefully that kind of answered the question.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think you've given us lots of good information, so we only have time for one more question that I see. Yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that lack of secure bike storage is one of the main barriers. And I'm wondering, is Colorado taking a statewide approach to solving that barrier? Like what department would concern itself with that?
So a good lead into the next presentation too. Mike, a question about bike storage and how the state is approaching thinking about that. Are you all trying to coordinate plans for that at a state level? Are you working with localities? How are you trying to be strategic about the support for bike storage?
Yeah, I think that's a super interesting question. We've done a little bit of work at the state level. I mean, a lot of that is more happening at the local level, or looking at Cycle Hoop. I know we've looked at Cycle Hoop as a technology to deploy to provide secure bike storage. So I've seen more of it at the local government level here in Colorado. It's hard. I mean, I think that trying to figure out how one thing we've talked about is looking at statewide codes to at least make sure that new construction has really good secure bike storage options. Because I think, as we said, bicycle theft can be a big challenge for individually owned e-bikes. So, probably a little more to come, but I think it's definitely something we're trying to think through and trying to figure out what, if any, the state role in kind of coordinating those efforts across either, metro areas or, how to encourage the adoption of secure bike storage options that are going to make people more comfortable, leaving their bike in a more public area for a longer period of time.
Great. Thanks, Mike, so much. If everybody wouldn't mind joining me in thanking Mike for his presentation. Raucous applause, Mike. I don't know if you could pick it up, but thank you again. And with that, I'm going to ask Andy to join us from Cycle Hoop to live in person here and share some perspectives from their work. And then we'll do questions and answers there as well.
I'm Andy Lageson from a company called Cycle Hoop. We're really excited to be here. Thank you to the university and Bike MN. I've been working in commercial bike parking for almost 20 years now. It's had a long evolution to where we're getting now with e-bikes and e-storage. Our company is very unique because it was started in London about 15 years ago. And they've actually done secure bike parking networks that whole time. There's 5,000 there's a picture here, not of the Cycle Hoop product, but this is another brand that we represent. But these types of facility, there's a network of 5,000 of these in London. So they've kind of done the secure bike parking program before we've even seen it here in North America. We started up the North American branch about 3 years ago in Minneapolis here, so we're local, and we're very excited about that because Minneapolis is such an amazing bike city. We all know that. But we got to start with the classic bike parking, right? The racks that you see with the X's on it, we've all seen those, the grid style and magazine racks. These are just like no more. Like, we're not advocating for those anymore. We're advocating against those. The other racks and products worked great for classic and analog acoustic bikes, but they are being targeted for theft now. Thieves can actually see what's locked to the bikes. They can see what type of locks are on there. They can easily cut a U-lock now in 20 seconds or less based on compact battery-powered tools. So this type of bike parking evolved out of the necessity to get rid of like grid-style racks, but really aren't sufficient anymore for e-bikes. There's e-charging racks available right now from various companies. There's another local company called Darrow that has products available as well. These products are great. They provide charging. They are secure in somewhat of a way. Thieves can still target them, and they rely on users' locks. So if like a cable lock's being used, which is easily able to cut, or a U-lock, thieves can go through that, like I said, in 20 seconds. So these tend to be less secure. Chargers can be stolen because they're exposed, and they work best in kind of indoor, covered, or like secure enclosures. I wouldn't recommend these for like public settings. And all of a sudden now, the type of e-bikes are changing. They're getting bigger. We have e-cargo bikes. We have adaptive bikes, trikes, quads. They're larger. They're more expensive. They have secure parking challenges. Like, where's the facilities to put these? Luckily, all this stuff started in Europe, and it's now becoming available in North America, and we're lucky to be the conduit of that. But these are different facilities that are available now for e-cargo bikes. They have multiple layers of security, so you use an app, a smart app, on your phone to access them. And then inside, there's either self-locking smart locks within the app, or you can use your own user lock. They have interior lighting. They're super high security. Thieves can't really see what's in them. So when you use the facility and leave it, you have kind of peace of mind knowing that when you come back, it's going to be there. Your wheels aren't going to be stolen. Lights aren't going to be stolen. Bags aren't going to be stolen. Your cargo is going to be safe inside. So this is what everyone's going to start seeing, even in Minneapolis later this year. It's really exciting. This is I think, the bike security products of the future that are actually available now. The coolest thing is the one in the upper right-hand corner. That's out of a company in New York called Uni that we partner with. And they're using their secure pods as placemaking as well. Community branding, neighborhood association branding, business improvement district branding, colleges, cities, wayfinding, advertising, planters, seeding, micromobility, scooters, all this stuff can be incorporated with those types of products. It's all has charging. It's all app enabled. That's how you get access to it. There's going to be cameras inside a lot of these facilities for additional security. And some of the companies that we're working with provide insurance in these programs. So knowing if your bike does go missing for whatever way, it's going to be, you'll have a way to get it replaced with insurance programs. E-bikes are heavy. Some of these facilities have to go vertical for density. So there's going to be vertical lift assist mechanisms to help lift e-bikes. A lot of these facilities you won't have to lift as well, so there's various options. Some of the photos show you the kind of the smartphone access, and all of these types of facilities right here will be showing up later this year in Minneapolis, and we'll be expanding from there. There's a process in all this. This isn't like traditional just throw a bike rack at a brewery. This is a little bit more involved. There's different funding streams. Usually it starts with site planning. That could be public-private partnerships where city planners need to be involved, or a planning firm. We do some of this work as well. And then from there, getting approvals. The biggest thing, and I know Tony from Darrow's here, is the electrical hookups. It's like probably the hardest thing. Solar is the easiest. A lot of these pods are small. You can just drop them right into place and bolt them down. The solar piece of that is the easiest way to go, just because it's all inclusive of the facility. There's still some issues with solar in the Midwest, obviously with snow. Panels get covered. That's a maintenance issue. Downtown cores, there might be too much shade and not enough sunlight coming into those locations. So it's still kind of an issue here. What we're doing with Minneapolis is most of it's going to be hardwired, the locations that we're working on. So there's more departments involved. There's Excel. We have to work with Excel's utility locations and potentially trench in, which is additional construction costs. And then from there, metering. So who's paying that monthly bill if it's an Excel utility job? And then code. Like a lot of cities don't even have their bike parking standards updated for e-bike storage yet, and they're working on it. So we'll see that coming. So making sure you're following local building and city codes are still kind of up in the air. But we can help guide people through that. Location planning's a huge thing with some of these facilities. Kind of the older model was like a central downtown like bike hub that were kind of popular 10, 15 years ago. We tend to look at more of like a network model. So having smaller facilities just plastered all through a city, that's going to get probably a better user interface, kind of more like bike share. But these models can also be used in conjunction with each other. I kind of look at this new style of secure bike parking shelters as kind of like bike share. They can actually be used as bike share. They're essentially a dock. The apps can be configured for bike share. The apps can be used and the facilities can be used for e-bike lending. So you can actually do a lot with these facilities. And we're really excited to be working in this space with y'all. So yeah, thank you. Any questions? Yeah.
What's your business model? i.e., how do you make money?
That's a good question. We're selling some of these facilities direct. We're also selling, they have to be maintained. So we're trying to do like turnkey. So we're trying to do everything, like help with funding, vendor financing is available. We're actually maintaining the stuff ourselves, so cities don't have to do it. But yeah, it's that's kind of our model right now, is just like actually trying to sell the infrastructure for the most part. So
But is that are you selling them or are you basically leasing them?
there's both options are available. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said these are coming to Minneapolis, is the city buying them, or I'm just kind of curious?
No, it's so all this whole we could talk about this topic for like 3 hours probably, but so we have a joint partnership with a company out of New York called Uni. Excuse me, my mouth's getting dry. The city is we're looking at about 15 to 20 locations to be online. I'm hoping by the end of this year. The city is not paying for any of it. We're basically we're fronting the financing to put all this stuff in. And the city's allowed us to use advertising as a means to pay for everything. So that's paying for the infrastructure, that's paying for the maintenance, that's if there's graffiti or anything, that's covering that, snow removal. And then that advertising is also paying for all the users to use this entirely for free. And so that's the model we're using with the city of Minneapolis. And we're not sure if that's going to work in all cities. Some of it might be like private funding, public funding, or a mix. Some of it might be stuff that we're financing for cities as well. So, yeah.
For these garage models, do you use your own lock once you've got it open to secure the bike in the garage, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. Some of the smaller facilities that just will fit like 6 bikes in it, they're smaller pods. They're meant to be put anywhere. You can put them in a car parking space. You could put them in like a little plaza. Some of those facilities, once you get access through the app, which is your first layer of security, you'll then use your own user lock inside of it. There's bike racks inside of it. Some of the larger facilities actually have smart locks. So there's a lock built in to the facility. You can also use your lock as well as like a third layer of security, but you'll see those 2 different types of facilities and locking mechanisms.
They're hanging vertically, those are typically the ones that have an integral lock inside the facility for your bike.
Yes, I mean, it could be hanging vertically or parked horizontally. So, yeah.
2 questions. One is, I assume in the app you'll be able to see if there was space inside before opening it, because you can't see inside it. And then the second question is, I feel like I understand not wanting to show the bikes because of the things you mentioned around people targeting them, but I also think there's a benefit in people seeing these are being used. I'm curious if there's any models that have indicators on them of like 4 out of 5 spots are used. So people are like, oh, people are actually using this thing. I want to also do that, like kind of model the behavior that you see in the world, things like that. So think about that.
Yeah, and I think the app will start out, it'll evolve. And a lot of these facilities will evolve. Like some of these facilities don't have larger cargo vehicles yet established because like all of this is going to evolve. But the app will evolve. So like, let's say you want to bike down to First Avenue and catch a show, and you're like, man, I hope the pod down there has space. You can kind of check to see if there's availability, and probably in the future there'll be like saving a space. If you know you're going to be there to have space, kind of like bike share in a way, seeing what's available. But that will evolve for sure. Yeah, right back there. Yeah, sorry.
I actually have 2 questions. On the materials side, anything you put in the public right away gets damaged and
Totally.
graffiti or tagged or whatever it may be. So I work for transit and we put a lot of effort into materials that are easy to clean and non-toxic for our maintenance workers. How is that consideration being implemented on this side, and do they get tagged and damaged and all that? And then my other question is around app access. So we just heard the keynote who had low vision, and apps are not always the most user-friendly things for people who are low vision who might want to use something like this. How do you address those ADA concerns?
Sure. Great questions. The first question, just durability. All this stuff is built for commercial environments like London, like New York, Chicago, Minneapolis. So it's all, galvanized material, which doesn't rust in the winter, aluminum materials. All the cladding has coatings for graffiti removal. we have, unfortunately, a drunk driving culture in this country, and like some of these facilities are just going to get taken out. And there's budgeting in place for the replacement, basically. Like, we know that's going to happen. So as far as like vision, your question on vision, we haven't discussed that yet. Like, that's actually a great question. There is going to be other ADA features like adaptive bikes and e-cargo bikes and quads that can actually fit in some of these facilities. So that's a great question, though. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially for the pods that are in more high traffic areas where people are coming and going, are there time limits imposed on how long you can park your bike?
Yeah, that's also another great question. That's going to be determined by our city partners or any of our partners. We won't be able to dictate that, but we will be operating all of the facilities. So, like abandoned bikes are an issue, right? Like bikes get left behind. There'll be a communication process because we'll know which user that is on the space, so we can actually communicate with the users, and we can deal with like abandoned bike issues. I think 90% of users will probably just use it accordingly how it's supposed to be used. So, yeah.
Are these strictly outdoor fees, or could they be used in like a parking garage or like even apartment buildings where there have been theft issues? Could that be adapted to those indoor spaces as well?
Yeah, these products were actually developed for super dense areas that don't have like interior parking spaces in like apartment buildings. Example, London, they don't have any of that. It's all their infrastructure needed to be retrofitted, so they worked in the outdoor realm. So that's technically what these products are designed for, but they can go in parking garages, they could go in like a basement building setup. I think that's probably overkill, but that option is available, so, yeah.
You talk about commercial spaces, have these been placed in schools? Do you plan to do that here in Minneapolis, or has that happened?
We have actually some at the University of Minnesota right now. But yeah, I think as more people are on e-bikes, even like K through 12 schools, they'll need stuff like this as well. So, yeah.
Can you discuss the charging aspects a little bit more for e-bikes? How do you plug in your battery to one of these, I guess is sort of what I'm thinking? And,
Sure.
And what are you seeing for sort of charging curves? Like, is it more use during charging during the day, charging at night, things like that?
Yeah, I don't think we have great data on like day or nighttime usage for charging. There's going to be probably multiple different charging options where there's an outlet where you actually bring your own receptacle and plug it in. There's probably going to be some partnerships with a company called Swoby, they have actually like locker battery banks that you can actually do swaps. So the charging aspect, I think, is going to evolve and look a couple different ways. Once there's more standardization around batteries and charging, there'll probably be actually chargers in some of these facilities, but that's probably a few years down the road. So,
Thanks, Andy.
yeah,
Appreciate it.
thank you all.
Awesome.